everyone, welcome back to another powerful episode of AIBiz. I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving into a topic that many professionals secretly wrestle with, but rarely say out loud that in the age of AI, is my expertise still relevant? Yep. So, our guest today knows that fear intimately. Like, she lost her thriving dental career overnight to a devastating injury, and instead of letting it define her, she built and sold four companies across four industries. Yep. But success scattered in too many directions and led her to do what she does best, like light and match. Burn away what no longer served and rebuild from the ashes. So she is known globally as the Arsonist, a speaker, best-selling author, and the founder of Unleashing Influence, where she helps experts strip away the noise, architect identities the machine cannot replicate, and come a niche of mastery so unmistakable that no AI output can touch it. So please welcome to the show, Dr. Angela, the Arsonist. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Avik.
Amazing. So, Angela, like you have lived through disruptions in the most personal way, like losing your career overnight. So, how did that experience shape the way you view identity and expertise today?
I think it made it very obvious that identity, especially as a professional, is
Hmm.
a lot of the core of why we do what we do because it gives us a place in our community, it gives us confidence in ourselves. And when that goes away, it is really hard to function at a really high level. And I'm seeing this happen right now,
Hmm.
especially with our aging population of employees and executives. What's happening is they're slowly being aged out, which to me seems impossible because I'm 45 and some of them are like 55 and they're like, "Yeah, I can't get a job," and I'm scrubbing my resume for the date that I graduated from university. And it's causing a huge identity crisis in them because that's what they've prided themselves on. They had a place, they had a title, they had a great company that they worked for, and now they're going, "What am I contributing to the world?" So it's a hard place for people to be in.
That's true, definitely. And do you think that the professionals need a kind of controlled burn in their careers to shed like what's outdated and make room for what's next?
Yes, absolutely. With the disruption of AI, this isn't a slow or small disruption that's happening. We're seeing accelerated day by day. And so it doesn't mean that you're no longer relevant. What it means is you need to really start filtering out what you are relevant for because anything that we pride ourselves on in terms of intellect is in the machine, right? That's why it's called artificial intelligence. Anything that we have mastered with our brains is in the machine and it's accessible at a huge volume. And where professionals can really start to be able to make sure that they do stay relevant is becoming discerning with the filter that they're putting out into the world. So they're never gonna outspeed, they're never gonna outvolume AI, but the discernment of, okay, what is it you actually need to be taking from AI? How are we actually gonna use that in a prioritized way? How are we gonna use that to time collapse results? That's where people are gonna start to win against the machine. And really, it's not even an against, it's a leveraging the machine. So whatever you can use AI for, do it, but also have your human side as a co-partner with it so that you're moving forward in a way that is valuable to companies because companies aren't going to be like, "Oh, you're human, you're great, we should keep you," when they have this faster and easier way to move things forward. So we need to be working side by side with it to keep ourselves relevant.
So, definitely it's very powerful, but because so often we cling to what once worked, even when it's no longer serving us, what you are describing like feels like um, less like loss and more like liberation. So, uh, definitely. And when we talk about the AI, AI has taken a seat at the table in almost every industry. So, from your perspective, what can AI replicate from the human expertise, and where does it take absolutely hit a wall?
So anything that has been published, it has access to. We know this. And so anything that we want access to, AI can give us that. But what's happening is, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, sitting down with an LLM like ChatGPT or the like, and you ask it a question and it gives you a pretty thorough answer. And then you ask it another question and it gives you a slightly different answer and it's a whole bunch of information. And if you sit with it and you're talking to it for an hour, by the time the hour's done, you have so much volume of information. Sometimes you forget even where you started or what the point was of what you were trying to do. And so that's where AI is great. It can give us this volume, but then we need to be sifting through that and figuring out what is actually relevant to what we actually want to be doing. And that's where that human discernment comes from. My guess is eventually AI will have that discernment as well, but at this point it's creating massive volume of information, which is an overload for most people. So when we can be that discerning factor, that's where we're going to be able to really collaborate with it.
Exactly. Wow. So, like, for the experts, I mean, uh, who fear that AI is eroding their edge, what's the first step to shifting from replicable skill set to irreplaceable identity? What do you say?
So this is where the niche of genius part comes in. So when someone has decades of experience, they've gathered experience. They've gathered expertise. They've got the certifications, they've got the hours in the field doing what they've been doing, and they also have a passion for what they're doing. And so they can be that filtration system for the volume of information that's coming out. And they need to figure out really what they do best. And I used to do this as kind of an analog thing, but I used to have my clients when they were trying to figure out, "Oh my gosh, where do I fit in the world now?" when they've had to pivot. They would fill out sticky notes with all their different skills, and then I'd have them order it from most loved skill to least loved skill, and then we'd focus on the top 3 skills that they loved. And we would turn that into their niche of genius and just focus in on that. Because what's happening is, you know, people are not really looking for a jack of all trades. AI is your jack of all trades. Now they're seeking expertise. Who is that person who can get us there faster? And time collapse is a really important thing because the machine can definitely give us a lot of information that can time collapse, but it also can extend time when we're having to sift through all that knowledge. So if we have someone who can be getting that volume of information, again, organizing things and prioritizing what we actually need to do based on that volume and helping time collapse the results, that's where the win really comes in.
Hmm. Exactly. Very, very true said. Yep. So, like, what to say? Like, that distinction between the skill and identity is definitely huge, but it's almost like AI is reminding us to um, double down on the part of us that cannot be coded. So
Mhm.
the lived experience, the scars, and the perspective. So what do you think?
Well, I think we've been trained to identify ourselves with achievement. Especially with how we've been trained in university, right? They competed us against each other. Dental school especially, right? It's like they would post everyone's marks and be 1, 2, 3, 4 through to 26, right? So people started memorizing each other's student numbers. They knew who was number 1, they knew who was at the bottom. And we were trained to be competitive, and it was competitive based on our intellect. And now what's happening is the thing that we've prided ourselves on. This was a big lesson for me when I lost my dental career because I had wanted to be a dentist since I was 2. So at 32, when my dental career burned to the ground because of an injury, suddenly I was left going, I don't know who I am, right? Because even as a 2-year-old, I would charm people into laying down and letting me poke around in their mouth. So dentist was kind of always on my radar for 30 years. And then when that wasn't my thing anymore, it was really hard. So I understand what is happening for people right now. And some people are just putting on the blinders and, hiding their head in the sand going, this is going to pass, which I think is just, it's a fear response, right? They're going into, into light instead of actually doing something about it. And so what happens is when your identity gets burned away, you do have to sit back and go like, what does actually matter for me? And what do I actually want to contribute to this world? So the achievement part is very external, right? It's like trying to get the awards, and once we graduate from university and whatnot, the awards kind of simmer down. And now it's like, well, you get the next award is what is the next position? What is the next ranking? What is the next title that you get? But as that stuff is being stripped away, we need to figure out really what our purpose is in this world and how we can actually be contributing that in whatever capacity that's going to be. And for some people, that's going to be pivoting out of intellectual industries. For some people, it's going to be becoming a partner with the machine. And there's going to be other pathways that are going to emerge as this continues to evolve.
Mm, true, true, exactly. So, lovely. And like in your work that you have emphasized that this isn't just about the marketing, it's all about identity. So, why do you believe that identity is the one thing that AI cannot steal?
Because AI is not going to hand us our identity. Our identity comes from ourselves. And it comes from when you actually find what your purpose is in this world and you know that that's what you're supposed to be doing, nothing can move you off that. And most people don't find that centering in themselves until significantly later in life. Right? If someone finds it in their 20s, they're pretty darn lucky. But
Mm,
most people go through, well, midlife crisis, I think, is an identity crisis as well, where we're going, what are we actually doing here? Things are starting to change in our world and we're trying to figure out where our place is. And it seems to be that centering in ourselves kind of hits in 50s and 60s when we go, okay, this is what I actually want to do, right? We've stripped away a bit of health, we've stripped away our aesthetics, we've stripped away a lot of things that we used to think mattered because we were trained to think that they mattered. And then suddenly you go, oh, if I only had a few years left to live, this is what I want to contribute to the world. And for most people, it's not about becoming a billionaire. Yes, contributing could get you to a really high financial status, but it is that finding that, we could say, soul's purpose in
mm,
what you actually want to bring to this world that really starts to set people on fire and get them moving at a really high pace. And I think this is why a lot of times when people start to achieve really big things in this world, not from an external achievement, but within themselves, it's because they found that purpose and then everything becomes easier. So once you know that you know that you know what you're supposed to be doing here and you start aligning everything with that in your business, in your life, then you actually want to do it. So it's not about, oh, I have to do this because that's what my job is. You become passionate about it and you actually want to contribute that to the world because you know that's what you were here for.
mm, true, true. So, like, uh, like you call yourself the arsonist, definitely, because you help people burn away what no longer fits. So, what's the one thing that you believe most professionals need to set on fire right now to stay relevant in the AI era, basically? Yeah.
I think it's the external pressures that they're taking on, because if they keep, like, the what we need to be achieving right now is changing on a daily basis. So the expectations are changing. And if you're basing your self worth on everything that's coming at you from the outside, you can drive yourself completely insane. But once you find that within yourself what you actually want to be doing and you stick to that and you can let everything else just fade into the background and no longer be noise around you, that's where you're really going to be able to start doing what you need to be doing. And that's happening. It's going to be more and more important as AI starts taking over our intellect, because what our purpose is isn't intellect. There's some sort of contribution that may involve intellect, but it's not purely intellect. It's not purely what we've learned as our contribution, right? It's not what we studied. It's not the certifications that we have. It's something higher than that.
True. Yeah. So, like, if someone is scared to strike that match, I mean, terrified of letting go. So, what would you tell them to help them step into reinvention with the courage?
One of the tools that I use is the personal branding playbook app, which I've built.
Okay.
And what it does is you just talk to the machine. You talk about your past, your present, and your future. And you don't have to know where you're trying to go with it. You just answer the questions, and it asks you questions from different dimensions. And what happens with that is, because of all the different dimensions it's asking from, you start to have revelations. And then when you get the playbook, which is a 60+ page document, it gives you a centering of who you actually are and what your genius is in this world, who you should be working with, et cetera. And then you can build whatever you want from there. But when people go through that exercise and they're being questioned deeply, and sometimes you're being asked the same question, but it's slightly different. It could be annoying, but what it does is it starts to get your brain looking at all the different pieces, and suddenly the pattern starts to make sense as to what you should be doing and what you should be letting go of. Now, the fear of letting things go, pretty normal. Nobody likes change. But
Yeah.
what happens is I just encourage people to start lighting one match at a time. So it's like, okay, this is what you know you should be doing. Okay, you have clients over here that you shouldn't be working with that are in a skill set that you shouldn't be doing. So we're just going to let go of one of those at a time. And anyone who comes in for a call, a sales call to leverage that kind of service, you're just going to say no. And you're going to pass them on to one of your colleagues who actually loves doing that, whose purpose is that. And so you slowly start moving things towards fully being in your niche of genius. Now, some of my clients are rebels and they're bold like me, where they're like, let's just burn this whole thing down and we know this is where we're supposed to be going, so let's do that. For most people, it has to be one little match at a time, and then we slowly get them moved towards where they need to be. But it can happen for some people, it's within a month they're there. For some people, it's within a year. But what happens is once we start burning down those veils that they've had of like everything's okay, and they start to realize everything's not okay, this is not where I want to be, and they see where they actually want to be and they know that's what they should be doing, it becomes really hard to stay in misalignment with your purpose and doing the work that you shouldn't be doing.
Hmm. More lovely thing. Lovely. Great. So, Angela, I mean, thank you so much for bringing your fire to this conversation today. And what I'll say, like you have reminded us that AI can replicate our skills, it can never replicate our stories, our scars, our lived experience, and obviously our identity. That's where the real irreplaceable value lies. So, uh, for those who are listening, if you have been quietly wondering, like whether your expertise is replaceable, then Angela's message is very clear. It's not your brilliance that's at risk, it's your positioning. And the good news is, you can burn away the outdated and rebuild something AI will never touch. That's a great part of it, right? So, Angela, if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the great medium to connect?
So the best, if you want to access the app, just go to app.unleashinginfluence.com. And you can always find me on LinkedIn as well under Dr. Angela Mulrooney, and I'd be happy to have a chat.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links into the show notes for easy reference. And with this hope, until next time, remember that your mind is powerful, your life is yours to design, and the only match you need is the courage to strike it. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.